Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're cackling something that, we all feel at some point loneliness. But we're not just talking about the feeling, we're going to dig into how it's actually a hidden enemy to your physical health. What if I told you that this feeling, it's not just in your head? It is having a direct, real, physical impact on your body. So, how can a feeling actually attack your body? It sounds kind of strange, right? Well, let's dive in and uncover how this thing we call loneliness can quietly become one of the biggest threats to your health. Okay, first things first. We absolutely have to get this straight. Being lonely and being alone, they are not the same thing. Not at all. All right, so check this out. Loneliness, that's a feeling, right? It's that internal, subjective sense of being disconnected. Social isolation, on the other hand, is the objective reality. It's something you can measure, an actual lack of contact with other people. You can be in a packed stadium and feel totally lonely, or you could be home alone for a weekend and feel perfectly happy and content. See the difference? And look, this is not some rare niche problem we're talking about. The numbers are pretty staggering. Research shows that more than a third of adults over the age of 45 say they feel lonely. That's huge. It's like a massive silent epidemic. Okay, so how does this feeling, this internal state, actually translate into real physical harm? And I'm not being metaphorical here. Loneliness literally launches a direct physiological assault on your body. When loneliness becomes chronic, it wages this three-pronged war on your body's most critical systems. We're talking about your cardiovascular system, your immune system, and even your neuroendocrine system. Yeah, it throws your hormones completely out of whack. But why? Why does our body have such a strong negative reaction to a lack of connection? Well, the answer really goes back to our fundamental wiring as social creatures. It's baked into our DNA. A big piece of the puzzle is something called the reactivity hypothesis. Here's the gist. Our bodies are built to react to stress. That's normal. But when that stress response gets turned up way too high for way too long, which is exactly what happens with chronic loneliness, it starts to cause actual disease. And the cardiovascular system is often the first to take a hit. Here's a good way to think about it. Your body is constantly dealing with stress, right? Big stuff, small stuff, it's always there. Now, having social connections, your friends, your family, your community, it doesn't make the stress disappear, but it acts like this incredible protective shield, a buffer that just softens the blow. So when a stressor hits, your body's internal alarm system goes haywire. Your heart rate shoots up, cortisol starts flooding your system. Now, here's the magic part. Social support helps you calm down faster. It helps shut that alarm off. But without that support, without that buffer, the alarm just keeps on ringing, and that leads to chronic inflammation, which slowly, quietly damages your body from the inside out. So that's the body. But let's shift gears and look at the brain, because the physical damage we've been talking about is mirrored by a really serious mental toll. The mind and body are absolutely in this together. It's no surprise that social isolation is directly linked to worsening depression and anxiety. But what's truly frightening is how long-lasting these effects are. I mean, studies have shown that loneliness experienced by an adolescent can actually predict mental health issues up to 9 years down the road. That's a long shadow. We all just lived through a tragic, large-scale example of this, the COVID-19 pandemic. It was like a forced global experiment in social isolation. We saw firsthand what happens when those vital social connections are just severed. And the results, especially for young people, were devastating. And the impact was just stark. Look at the data. During the peak pandemic months in 2020, the number of suicidal attempts among young people was significantly higher than it was just 1 year before. This isn't just a coincidence. It's a direct consequence of stripping away those essential social structures. So all of this brings us to this really strange paradox that we're all living through right now. Think about it. We have more tools, more apps, more ways to connect than at any other point in human history. And yet, we seem to be facing a crisis of loneliness. And that very same technology that was a lifeline for so many of us during the pandemic, well, it's a classic double-edged sword. Sure, it connects us, but it can also lead to things like phone addiction, and it can replace real physical activity with just passive scrolling.
It's a tool that can bring us together just as easily as it can push us further apart. So, what's the bottom line here? What we've seen is that social connection isn't some kind of luxury. It's a biological necessity, as fundamental as our need for food or water. It literally regulates our stress response, protects our physical health, and keeps our minds stable. It is not a nice to have. It is an absolute requirement for survival. And that leaves us with a really important question to chew on. In a world that has more ways to connect than ever before, why are we more isolated than ever? And more importantly, how do we make sure we're building genuine, life-sustaining connections and not just fancier, more elaborate ways of being alone?